On today's show, we'll be talking about women.
What about it? Should I be scared?
No need to be scared. We're actually going to be talking about how women rule the world.
With all of our responsibilities, you would think that we do rule the world, but that's clearly not the case. Out of all of the Fortune 1000 companies, only 54 of the CEOs are women. So in other words, only 5.4% of the nation's top 1,000 CEOs are women. Now, although that's progress, the struggle for women to break into the top spot hasn't gotten any easier.
Yeah, tell me about it. Aside from all the meetings, all of the deadlines, and all of the late nights of working, we also have families to take care of, meals to prepare, kids to care for, and a ton of other things to do.
To explore this issue a little more, we sat down with 3 local professional women. Troylyn Brewster, a Houston-based CPA working as an audit manager at a local accounting firm. Sarah Rogers, our host, and director of the American Society of Pharmacovigilance, also called ASP, and Latanya Joubert, a behavior interventionist with a local school district. These women have agreed to sit and share their experiences as professional women and provide a little insight. Let's hear what they had to say. Ms. Joubert, thank you so much for coming. Now, I have some questions for you. Can you tell us a little bit about your professional background?
Sure, I'd love to, and thank you for having me. I am a behavior interventionist. My professional background is that I started out in education in 1992. I taught for 7 years. Then I became an academic achievement specialist. Loved it so much till I said, hey, I want to do something even greater with kids, to have a greater impact. So I decided I would become a counselor. I went back to school, graduated from Prairie View A&M University with a master's in educational guidance and counseling, and I've been counseling ever since.
Wow, quite impressive.
Thank you.
So you work, as you said, as a behavior interventionist here in Houston.
Yes.
Can you tell us some of the services that you provide for students and what types of students you work with at the moment and in the past?
Okay. Well, I've been very fortunate in that I've been able to work with elementary, middle, and high school students from kindergarten through 12th grade. Some of the things are general counseling, grief counseling when needed. We teach a lot of communication skills, how to enter into the world of work, what to expect, anger management, how to get along with others, how to get along with family, your peers. So a lot of general counseling, but really focusing in on whatever the needs of the children are.
That's quite an array of services and impressive. The education profession seems to be female dominated when it comes to teaching and lower ranking positions. Can you speak a little about any of the hurdles you're aware of when it comes to women moving up in the school system, specifically into upper management positions?
Sure. I believe that because women have been in education, you know, they just sort of go hand in hand. Women are the first educators in the home. Even when you look at television, one of the professions that women were accepted into first seems to have been education. That being said, since we were there on the forefront, it seems like it has been easier in education for us to move up, as opposed to some of the other professions like engineering or business or business management. Because we've been in education, it seems like it's been easier for us to move up through the ranks. Now there are many people, females, who are superintendents, associate superintendents, deputy superintendents in districts throughout the country. So I think that we have arrived in great numbers in the area of education, whereas maybe we haven't excelled so much in other areas.
So in the field of teaching, you feel that you've witnessed a difference as far as the females in upper management positions?
I really have, and I'm proud to say that it seems like if you have the drive and determination, it seems as though this is one area where females truly can excel.
That's fantastic to hear. Can you speak a little more in general? What types of challenges do you think women face in advancing their careers?
Well, I think that with women, we have lots of challenges because some people hold on to the traditional ideals of what they think women should do, and other people are more progressive in their thinking. Many people still believe that women should stay home, and it's really, to me, an individual choice now. But I think it's all about your priorities. Where do you see yourself now? Where do you see yourself in the future?
That makes sense. Now, to your point, it's no secret that women are predominantly the main caregivers when it comes to their home life. Can you explain how a woman's expectation to her home life may impact her professional life?
Well, again, I really think that it comes from within and how you really perceive where you want to be, the support of your family, how you and your husband or you and your spouse actually distribute those duties, or how you see your role. So I believe that a lot of that has a great impact on what you decide to do, what your focus is.
That seems all very true. Now, with all that you have going on, how do you maintain your personal sense of identity?
Well, for me, again, it's about priority and about focus. To me, it's faith first, family, then my career.
That sounds lovely. Thank you so much for coming, Mrs. Joubert.
Thank you for having me.
We really appreciate it.
All right.
Hi, Sarah. Thanks for being with us today. As you know, I have some questions for you. Can you tell us a bit about yourself and your professional background?
Yes, so as you mentioned before, I'm a director at the American Society of Pharmacovigilance. My background is in pharmacy. I'm a pharmacist. I received my doctorate in pharmacy from the University of Houston College of Pharmacy, graduated in 2012. From there, I worked at MD Anderson Cancer Center in the ambulatory transfusion unit. So basically, all of our patients were receiving IV chemo, and my area actually specialized in investigational IV chemo. So majority of our patients were on study protocols. And while I was at MD Anderson, became board certified pharmacotherapy specialist, and I got really interested in an area of study called pharmacogenomics, which is basically a laboratory test that can be done to kind of give clinicians an indication as to how patients metabolize drugs, and it could be help to clinicians to select an ideal drug for a patient that's more likely to be effective and less likely to cause side effects. So in learning more about that area of study, I became really aware of what a huge problem adverse drug events are. So most people don't realize this, but adverse drug events are the 4th leading cause of death in the U.S. It costs the U.S. health system $136 billion a year, which I think is an underestimate, just because not all adverse drug events are caught, essentially. And it's causing millions of emergency room visits and hospital admissions. So a group of us came together and we started the American Society of Pharmacovigilance, which is a nonprofit organization.
Wow.
Yeah, definitely. And we are, just to give you more info about the organization, we are a national biomedical and healthcare network that is open to all healthcare professionals.
What type of work do you do at the American Society of Pharmacovigilance?
So our mission is to rapidly and dramatically reduce the high rate of suffering and mortality of adverse drug events in the U.S. So I think our first goal is really just to create a platform for healthcare professionals to come together, to create a multidisciplinary group to kind of attack the problem at all angles. And my kind of day-to-day activities center around awareness of the issue and also education and training, because pharmacovigilance and especially pharmacogenomics isn't something that all healthcare professionals are trained on, especially with pharmacogenomics being a newer area of study, maybe something that people haven't implemented yet. So we do work a lot with creating awareness about pharmacogenomics also, especially as being used as a tool to prevent adverse drug events. We're also working to create an open access journal, medical journal in pharmacovigilance, to promote research in the area. And we are also planning to put out essentially an adverse drug event annual report that showcases the state of ADRs in the U.S. and summarizes all the current literature. So those are some of the things we're working on right now.
That seems like a lot.
It is. It really, as we go forward, we realize more and more just how big the problem is. So.
Wow. Now, what exactly is pharmacovigilance?
You know, that's a great question because I feel like a lot of people outside of healthcare aren't really familiar with the term. It is basically, pharmacovigilance is any effort to track, monitor, or prevent adverse drug events. And more than that, there's certain words or jargon that's used to describe pharmacovigilance that even in healthcare are being misused or not used precisely. So pharmacovigilance, maybe people might think of medication safety or a medication error. So for example, the doctor prescribed lisinopril 5 milligrams to a patient, but the pharmacy delivered lisinopril 10 milligrams to the patient. So that's a medication error. But not all medication errors result in adverse drug events. So maybe by happenstance, lisinopril 10 milligrams was a better dose for that patient. So that's one thing that we try to definitely get out there is the differences in nomenclature and using these terms correctly. And also just prevention of serious side effects too. So because an adverse drug reaction is any unintended effect of a medication. So that includes side effects, and I think most pharmacists, if you say like, what's an adverse drug reaction? Well, oh, it's a side effect of a medication, which it definitely is, but it's any unintended effect. So when we prescribe the medication, we're intending it for it to work. So if it's ineffective, that's an unintended effect. It's actually an adverse drug reaction. And some of the side effects can be really serious too. So one side effect, for example, is Stevens-Johnson syndrome, which most people may not be familiar with because it's really rare. But essentially, if a patient has a sulfa allergy, they might be more at risk for this side effect. And what happens is their skin sloughs off, and they lose up to 80–90% of their entire skin. And the chances of surviving that are really low. So we try to think of ways to screen for these types of patients and especially prevent serious side effects like that.
Wow. Now, you've used the term adverse drug event quite frequently.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I think about an adverse drug event, I think about the opioid epidemic and overdoses. Do you work to address these issues?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, overdosing is definitely an unintended effect of a medication. When a physician prescribes maybe 30 tablets of a drug, they're not anticipating that the patient takes the whole bottle at once, and that's, can lead to overdosing. But I think the opioid crisis, especially here in Houston, is a huge problem. There's a lot of drug diversion. So basically, you'll have patients that are going to the physician that are in legitimate pain, and they'll get a pain medication, but maybe they have an addiction, so they'll take too much. Or maybe they're not in legitimate pain and they're selling it on the black market. That's where the drug diversion comes in. And surprisingly, a lot of, or not a lot, but more physicians than what you would think are actually running like quote-unquote pill mills. They will just give opioid medications to anyone that comes in, and that's kind of contributing to the problem. DEA is trying to shut those down. And the problem with opioids is one of the side effects is it can cause respiratory depression. So that's why taking too much of it can cause death. And that's part of the high rate of ADEs is because of overdosing. But a patient intentionally causing themselves harm is not necessarily something that a healthcare professional might be able to anticipate when they prescribe it. But there are ways to screen for, looking at the patient's history. Have they been suicidal in the past? Do they have an addiction history or an addictive personality? Do they have a history of using illicit drugs? Maybe these patients should get a non-opioid painkiller. So that's one thing. And then when you say overdose, intentionally taking too much is one thing, but then on the flip side of that, it's starting a patient at a dose that's too high. So physicians use kind of clinical algorithms to prescribe patients medication, and a lot of times these medications are prescribed to the best of their ability, but if patients aren't getting this type of pharmacogenomic testing to understand how their body metabolizes drugs, then they may be started at a dose that's too high for them based on their genetic background too. So that's another issue that we also focus on.
This seems like really important work. Now, how can people get involved with the organization?
There are a lot of ways to get involved. One way for healthcare professionals, we invite you to join our network, join our mission. If you really have a strong background in pharmacovigilance and you really want to get involved, we're also looking for people to join our leadership team. So definitely feel free to reach out to us if that's you. If you have an interest in medical literature, or you've worked as an editor for a medical journal, for example, maybe you'd like to help us start our open access journal in pharmacovigilance. And if you're not in healthcare, but you're a patient that's experienced serious side effects and you want to tell us your story, we'd love to hear it. We also have a blog that we have a variety of different people write for the blog. So we'll have doctors, pharmacists, but also patients who have experienced side effects. So if you want to write about your experience with that, we would definitely welcome that. And also, since our organization is a 501c3 nonprofit, we also invite you to reach out to us about sponsorship opportunities, and especially if patient safety or drug safety is something that your organization focuses on, maybe just think about us during your next round of charitable giving.
Absolutely. Now, where can people find out more information about ASP?
Sure. Well, so you can check out our website. It's www.stopadr.org. And you can also email me directly. My email address is sarah@stopadr.org, and I'd be glad to provide you some references or supplemental material to tell you more about the problem as well. So
that's all excellent information. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Quite an honor.
Thank you for being here, Troylyn. Now I do have some questions for you. Firstly, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your professional background?
Sure. I'm a CPA. I've been in public accounting for 20 years. I started out in Big Four here in Houston. I've since moved on to local accounting firms. My primary focus right now is nonprofit accounting. I also delve into IT controls assessments as it relates to our audit engagement. So exciting stuff.
That's great. What is your role?
I'm an audit manager, and as an audit manager, my primary role is to oversee the audit process, and that includes staffing the engagement, making sure that it's the right timing, number of hours spent on the engagement, the planning of the engagement, and also determining the engagement fee.
That's great. Can you give us some more information about the auditing process and the types of benefits for your clients?
Sure. It depends on the organization. Most publicly traded companies do require an audit. Otherwise, audits are performed in order to meet bank covenant requirements, also as part of compliance requirements for governmental or private grants received, and also just part of an organization's due diligence and oversight process, as determined by the board's bylaws. So just to make sure that everything is right and that the audit process is in place.
Okay. Now, accounting and finance are male-dominated. Can you speak a little bit about the hurdles you've encountered along the way because of your gender?
Well, first of all, I'm very grateful for those who set the path for me as a female minority, and for their sacrifices, and it's on their shoulders that I stand. Yes, it is a male-dominated profession, and some women just aren't comfortable being aggressive. I'm one of them. I've since learned to push through those types of situations and be more assertive and be more comfortable in uncomfortable or unfamiliar situations.
That's great. Now, can you speak a little more generally I mean, what types of challenges do you think women face in advancing their careers?
Well, as I mentioned, some just don't feel comfortable in a very male-dominated environment. They don't feel comfortable being assertive or being part of the, so-called boys club. However, I do think things have improved, particularly over the last few decades. In fact, all 4 of the big 4 accounting firms at one point, and maybe still so, have had managing directors. So there have definitely been strides. Also, from a practical standpoint, women need to be more included in the leadership pipeline because they're more female accounting majors than male. So just from a practical standpoint of filling up the talent pool for years to come, there just needs to be more inclusion of women in the leadership role.
Right. Now, it's no secret that women are still predominantly the main caregivers when it comes to home life. Can you explain how a woman's expectation in her home life may impact her professional life?
Sure. In short, I believe the expectation is that you take care of the home no matter what. Now, just speaking for myself, some of that expectation is self-imposed, and some of it is based on family expectations and pressure from societal norms. You feel like you have to be superwoman. So that may mean turning down an opportunity at work or professionally, or feeling like you have no choice but to. On the flip side of that, that could also mean missing a field trip that your child is having. I really don't believe there's any such thing as work-life balance. I think that you do your best focusing at the moment of what you're working on, be it family or work, and knowing that you will likely need to redirect your attention because something happens at work, and you have to send an email at night, right after dinner, or making an appointment for your child while you're at work. So it tends to blend in, and all you could do is just do your best and accept the results.
Those are great answers. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.